Welcome. This is a quick session this morning to talk about the benefits of process automation. Specifically, we're going to touch on process analysis, process optimization, and process automation. We're going to step you through the benefits of doing this using a simplified process from one of our projects as an example. Let's start off telling you a little bit about who we are. We are Summation. We're an Australian company and we specialise in improving business execution. And we do that two ways. We do it by improving people and we do it by improving and automating business process. And that's the topic of this presentation today. There are a number of key steps we go through when we work with clients. The first thing is we document the as-is process. We work out the steps and the decisions and the volumes associated with that. We attach costs to the as-is process steps. We design and work out what we want it to look like. And then we start a 30 or a 60-day improvement cycle. And each of those improvement cycles, we work to a new to-be process state. Let's look at that now. You can see on the screen that we're already partway through that documenting the as-is process. And the process is on the screen there, made up of a number of steps and decisions. Now what I'm going to highlight are the paths through the process that a transaction follows. So I've already highlighted path 1. And now we can go on and see there actually is a second path through the process involving an extra decision, a couple of extra data steps, and finally a third path through the process. So now we've captured the process and we've worked out how data flows through that process. Now let's spend a little bit more time and look at the costs of that. We do another round of analysis and we can determine the costs for each step in the process. And I've highlighted the costs for step 1 on the screen there. Path 1 is costing us $900. When a transaction flows through the second path, path 2, it costs us $1,150. And finally, $1,550 for a transaction that flows through path 3. Now we can use the information we've gathered so far to work out the total costs of the process. Now we know from our analysis that 50% of the transactions are following path 1. This was an interesting point because the client thought that 90% of the transactions were going through path 1 and that path 2 and 3 were really there just as an error catching. Now that, when we analysed it, turned out not to be the case. What's relevant about that is it meant that 50% of their transactions were attaching waste to them, and waste equals cost. We know that the process runs 2,400 times a year. We know the costs, and therefore we can determine the total cost to the organisation of this process, a little over $2.6 million. Now what we want to do is reduce that waste. The first thing that we do is we look at the data or the information flowing into the process to see how we can improve the quality and the consistency of that. And that's something that we did here. And just by doing that analysis and putting some process and some procedures in place, we were able to change the dynamic of that. 85% of the transactions now flowing through path 1, 10% through path 2, 5% through path 3. We've reduced that 50% of the transactions having waste down to 15%. We multiply that out for the same 2,400 runs a year, and we can see we've had an impact in the order of $300,000 to $350,000 in cost savings already. The next cab off the rank is for us to look at automation. Now in this particular process there were 3 potential areas of automation, and we elected to use a tool called Sylvexia. Now Sylvexia offers a new approach that helps businesses increase control and efficiency while reducing costs. And they provide a hosted platform that allows you to automate back office processes that your people can control from a browser. Interestingly, it was originally developed for and used by the banking industry, but it's a process platform that can help almost any business that has any sort of data intensive back office process. Now we like it because people operate the process, can do the design, and it matches our philosophy of having fast, impactful change. Now you can see that we've reduced or recut the process costs there, and we can go through that same exercise now, looking at, well, what is the cost of each transaction, what path is it following, how many are there, and again we can see we've had an impact on the cost of the project, or rather on the cost of the total process, which is $1.6 million. The next step in our review we enter a new cycle, but this time we say, what steps can we cut out? Let's re-review everything with all the data that we have. And in this instance, we're able to, again, put some improvements at the start and in the middle of the process that completely eliminated the third path. And I've put some new costing figures up on the screen so that you can see that. Now that became the end of our project. What I want to do now is talk about what were some of the transformational outcomes that we had. The first and most important from our client's perspective, we reduced the cost by 40%, so $2.65 million down to $1.6 million. We've reduced the error potential, so because better quality data is flowing into the process, because we have automation, because we have a range of compliance checks, there is now less cost associated with errors and less errors overall. We've freed up resources who previously were doing data intensive operations to now go and apply their expertise elsewhere in the organisation. We've increased the confidence of the people using the process and those who get the results of the process. Less errors equals more confidence. We've improved the compliance. So in those elements where we've used the automation, we now have much stronger audit trails and a lot of history we can fall back on. We've reduced key person dependencies, and what we've also done is expose the process and documentation. So now we don't have 1 or 2 or 3 individuals in the organisation with that critical information in their heads, and as soon as they disappear, there's a whole bunch of cost to try and recover that process. We've exposed it in documentation, we've reduced that key person dependence. Now that brings us to the end of our discussion, but there are a couple of things I wanted you to take away. The first is I've included the web address there for Solvexia. Now just a reminder, Solvexia is a new approach that helps businesses increase control and efficiency while reducing cost, and they do that through a hosted platform. So it automates your back office data intensive processes. We've found that our clients find it very easy to use, very quick to adopt, and get very quick returns. The second thing is an article that we found and like in the Harvard Business Review, and it talks about when is process art and not science. And I think it introduces an interesting perspective when we're talking about process transformation, process design, and when we should do it. I hope you've got something out of this. Thank you very much.